We're going to be talking about resilience today. We're going to define what resilience is and then also how to train your resilience. We all have the ability to be resilient at least some level. And as we go throughout our lives, the things that we encounter, the situations, the people, whatever that may be, does demand some kind of resilience. So we're going to be talking about how to train your resilience, how to bring that out, and what you can do on a daily basis to grow those skills and thrive within your life, no matter what situation comes your way. So I'm Sierra. I am a program coordinator within Wellness and Work Life. I also have a background in sport and performance psychology, working with athletes as well as soldiers in the Army, families, and employees on how to help their mind work for them rather than against them in any situation. And as we're thinking about our daily lives, the demands that come up that are asked of us, we can think of anything that we do as a performance. So we want to bring our best self to every single situation, whether that's at work, whether that's with our family, with our friends. We want to be able to put ourselves in the best situation, the best, the how to bring out our best in every single situation. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing generally what resilience is first so that we're all on the same page. In order to grow something, to develop something, we have to first understand what it looks like and what it actually is. So as Miranda said, you can turn your cameras on. We will be talking throughout the presentation in the chat. So get ready to respond, put your answers in the chat, and also your questions. We also welcome everybody to come off mute when there are questions at the end so that we can get that feel of connection in that in-person class, because that helps us all learn together. So let's get started. First, I want you to picture someone you consider a high performer, and this could be in any mode, any medium. It could be TV, movies, entertainment, athletics, within the corporate setting, any situation. Think of somebody you consider a high performer and maybe that you admire. Think about everything that they do. Think about everything that makes them a high performer, and you consider them a high performer. You can write these things down if you want. Don't put anything in the chat just yet. Just picture this person in total. Once you have that good picture in your mind, I want you to put in the chat what makes this performer a high level performer. What makes them so great at what they do? And I'm going to read some answers that we have in the chat as they come through. All right, I see determination. Amber says they never give up. They keep going no matter what adversity they face. Sounds kind of like resilience. They're intentional, they're organized, they're a good business person. They have the right mindset, their leadership, working well with others, grit, ambition, kindness, detail-oriented, versatility, having fun and enjoying what they do. These are all really great answers. They are following along the same lines as each other. I see a lot of leadership, strong work ethic, and a true vision. Ability to focus at one thing at a time. Yeah, that is a great skill to have in general, but it definitely, a high performer relies on that. Take good care of themselves, attention to detail, attitude, relentlessness. All right, these are all really great. Definitely qualities of a high performer, right? We see a lot of these things in the chat. We see that dedication, hard work, belief in themselves and that vision, the commitment, the time, and resources that they need to be that high performer. Maybe they have that talent. I saw a couple of people in the chat say that they were destined to be great. They were destined to have um, that high level of performer all along, which is partly true for some people. Maybe they had a really good coach or a mentor that they leaned on, that they learned from. They love the craft that they're really great at. They have that drive. No matter what happens, they're willing to try. They're willing to fail and to learn from those mistakes that maybe they've had. Yeah, these are all great. So we definitely see whatever person you chose, whatever high performer you decided to envision, to think about, to describe, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a business person or an entertainer, we see very similar characteristics or behaviors that are examples of being a high performer and what helps them get to the level that they are today or that they were at their height of performance, which is really interesting because even if there are completely different avenues of high performance, what is allowing them to be that high performer is almost exactly the same. It may look different, but that characteristic or that quality, that work that they're putting in is similar. I also like that we see in the chat a lot of things that are within our control. So it's not all about talent. It's not all about ability. If we think about a basketball player, I think maybe the first thing that we think of is that they're tall. It definitely helps somebody be really tall to be a basketball player, a good basketball player. But we also see a lot of professional basketball players that aren't the tallest, but they worked the hardest. They were able to put in the hours of dedication and learn from the mistakes and be really good, no matter how tall they were. So it really truly isn't all about talent, and that if we understand as individuals, we understand that the hard work is what really makes the difference. The things that we can do in ourselves, the behaviors that we have, that allows us to be at the level that we want to be and kind of follow along in the footsteps of these high performers at the highest level. Awesome. Okay, so next question is, what are you really good at? So I want you to think about, just on your own right now, think about one thing that you're really, really good at. Think about something that you're proud of. It could be a hobby, it could be something at work, it could be more abstract like communication skills. Just think about something that you're really good at. And then write down all the things that it took you to be really good at that thing. So put it in the chat. What took for you to get really good at this thing? Cynthia says practice, never giving up, patience, practice, yes. Being organized and detail-oriented, implementing systems at work, consistency, passion. I see a lot of other people connecting. So some people are saying that leaning on their support is going to be really helpful, learning from mistakes, and also teachers, good teachers. That is extremely important. Being empathetic and understanding. Being honest with yourself and where you need to push and grow. That is fantastic. Yeah, all really great. Thank you so much for sharing. I have the same ideas. I would say that I'm pretty good at running. That's something that I really enjoy and that I've seen a lot of progress in for myself. And that just takes hours, miles, and also understanding what it takes to get there. So learning, leaning on the people that are really good that I can learn from. And so I see a lot of similarities between the first question where we're thinking of that highest level performer, maybe a professional, that what it takes for them to be really great and what it takes for us to be really good at something on our own, a hobby or at work. And so we see a lot of the same characteristics and behaviors. That patience is really important. I saw a lot of people talk about that, patience and hours of practice, that commitment, all the hard work that it takes, and the feeling of fulfillment in the process, believing in yourself that you have what it takes to get to the point where you want to be really good at it. So that is fantastic. I think understanding that it takes all of this time and patience and hard work to get to where you are specifically for you in your skills, allows you to also understand that resilience is the same way. In order to be so good at something, we need to be uncomfortable as we're learning. We need to put in some hard work and hours of practice and be patient with ourselves to actually fully understand what it may look like and how we can develop that. So good news is resilience is absolutely a skill that we can deliberately practice. We will talk, of course, about certain things that you can do to practice resilience on a daily basis. But like I said, we need to understand exactly what it is first. So one thing is that it needs to be practiced deliberately. We need to put in as much work as possible, along with everything else that we do throughout the day. But when we're thinking about those skills that we are really good at, we're reflecting on the hours and the hard work that it took to get really good at those skills. We want to think about resilience in the same way. It is a pathway to that consistent, excellent performance. So as we talked about in the beginning, everything that we do as a performance, as we're bringing our best selves to meetings, one-on-one calls, anything, any task that we have to do for our work to be our best self. When we're at home, as a parent, as a friend, as a family member, we want to be as consistent as possible, and we want to bring our best selves to every single interaction, every single task that we have, because that's going to allow us to feel the most fulfilled, and allow us to be feel like we have control over our own lives, which is always a great feeling. And more formally, the definition of resilience is the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity, challenges, and change. So if we think about an egg and a bouncy ball, if I were to have an egg in one hand and a bouncy ball in another hand, and I drop the egg on the ground from like my shoulder height, it's going to break, it's going to splatter, it's going to make a mess. But if I drop the bouncy ball on the ground, it's going to bounce, it's going to continue moving, and then even when it stops bouncing, it's going to continue to move on the ground and roll. So we want to think about ourselves as that bouncy ball, not that fragile egg. Even if we're faced with those adversities, we're dropped from high up, we want to be able to bounce back in the face of adversity and challenges. And then once we are done bouncing, to continue the analogy, we want to be able to thrive and grow in the face of these challenges. So we may not bounce back as high as we were. We're never going to be the same after these adversities or challenges, especially from those big life changes. But we are going to continue to grow, learn from those things, and be our best selves, no matter what. So next game that we're going to play is true or false. So I'm going to put up some statements on the screen. You can either do a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or type true or false in the chat. We're going to test your knowledge a little bit on what resilience is. So true or false, you either have resilience or you don't. You're either resilient or you're not. What do we think? True or false? All right, I see some trues. I see a lot of false. Okay, it's looking a little 50-50 right now. So there are different levels of resilience that you can have. It's not either you have it or you don't, you're born with it or you're not. As we're talking about, resilience is a skill that you can develop, you can learn over time. So this, you either have it or you don't, is going to be false. We will learn to develop resilience. All right, next, true or false? You have to experience something significant to build resilience. You have to experience some kind of large life change or something really big that you develop resilience from. True or false? What do we think? All right, I see a lot of false, some true here and there. A lot of people are saying false. And you would be right. When you experience those large life changes or big significant challenges in your life, you can learn resilience from those. But in reality, those really small daily setbacks or demands, those things that are demanding all of your attention or feel like are you're pulling your attention in different ways, are going to build more resilience than that one large event. If we're thinking back to how to develop resilience or develop any kind of skill, really, we think about those hours of practice. We think about intentionally working on something every single day to get really good at it. And so when we're met with those small daily setbacks, those daily challenges, and we're able to practice resilience in small doses, it's gonna feel way more manageable, of course, than living through that one major life event. It's gonna help you build resilience over time. That's going to be stronger. You're going to have more confidence in your ability, and it allows you to reflect on those things and have more self-awareness, build that awareness so that you're able to pull on that with those when those large events happen, if they do. So yes, you don't have to experience something really significant to build resilience. You can build resilience on a daily basis with those small challenges that we encounter. Next, true or false? If you practice resilience, you can still express emotions. So, can I be resilient and express my emotions at the same time? All right, I see a lot of true. Almost everybody is saying true. Fantastic. You're doing great. This is true. So being resilient doesn't mean that we're invincible or invulnerable to showing emotion. I think a lot of times when we think about resilient people, we think about the people who are just completely neutral. They are, nothing phases them ever. That's not realistic. And we also want to be able to regulate emotions and feel a variety of emotions and feelings, because that's what part of being a human is. And it's also allowing us to identify the things that maybe are getting in our way of resilience, and then working through those, slowing down and practicing resilience in a more effective way. So yes, you absolutely want to practice resilience and still be able to express your emotions. It's not always pretty, especially as we're learning. It's all about regulating them in the way that's going to allow us to be our best selves. Last, true or false? hopefully everybody can get it right. We'll end on a good note. You can be resilient and rely on others. So is this true or false? All right, I see a lot of true. True. A couple people saying false. Okay. Yes. If you said false, if you said true, you are correct. You can be resilient, you can build resilience and still rely on others. As human beings, connection is extremely important to us. Resilience is a lot about relationships, identifying your support, leaning on the support when you need to, being able to discuss these things with other people. That's all about what resilience means. The classic example is Castaway. If you've seen the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, and even if you haven't, you know that Tom Hanks' character is stranded on an island for quite some time, and he's alone with all of these Christmas packages. He eventually finds a volleyball that he creates, his friend, his companion, Wilson. And so he is in probably one of the biggest experiences of his life that's going to change him forever. He needs to find some way to be resilient in that, and he creates a companion, someone who he can talk to, even if it's a volleyball. So even in those wild situations that we can find ourselves in, we still need to rely on other people to get through these challenges, get through these setbacks, and be resilient. So I'd like to say we all passed this, true or false. Good job. Hopefully you learned something. So now going back to the question about what helps us be so good at what we're good at, and thinking about everything that aligns with building resilience, we need to know how to do that, right? So we want to practice. We already know that. We know what resilience is. But how do we actually go about building resilience when we have everything else going on in our lives that is pulling our attention? Things happen all the time. How can we add one more thing to our plate on a daily basis and build resilience? The good thing is we're already put in situations that allow us to practice that resilience on a daily basis. Before we do that, though, I will just preface all of this with the resilience is pretty well studied in psychology. And so the skills that we're going to be talking about are more based in positive psychology from researchers at the University of Pennsylvania. And they heavily lean on cognitive behavioral science. So really focusing on where we have that control within ourselves. When we're met with these changes or setbacks or challenges that come up, most of the time it feels like we don't have control over those things. And a lot of the times we don't. But if we can allow ourselves to focus on the things that we can control, we are able to build that resilience, lean on the skills that we have, and allow ourselves to get through those challenges in the best way possible. So according to positive psychology, there are 6 competencies and 12 different skills that we can use to build resilience. And this building resilience also means that we want to build cognitive and emotional well-being to be that consistent, excellent performer that we strive to be, that our lives demand us to be. So we're going to go through the 6 competencies. So again, we want to focus on how we're going to build resilience. And then at the end, we're going to talk about a skill that you can do just to think about ways to build resilience. The first way, the number 1 building block that we have to build resilience is self-awareness. So as we go throughout our lives, we definitely build more awareness of how we respond to certain situations, how we speak to people, how we interact with others. The more experiences we have, the easier it is to build resilience, but we still have to be aware. We still have to want to build that resilience to be able to reflect on certain situations and understand how our behaviors, how our emotions, and how our thoughts are connected and how they show up in every single situation. So we have to have self-awareness before we have anything else in order to build resilience. And again, these are the 6 competencies, but they're all skills that we learn along the way. So we have to practice these things. We have to be intentional. And it's a learning process, it's a journey. It's not like one day we wake up and we have 100% self-awareness and we never have to think about it ever again. It's always a learning process, which is exciting because we're always growing, we're always learning, and there's always room to become more resilient or be our best selves in other situations. So number 1 is self-awareness before anything else. The second competency is self-regulation. So that's where we're thinking about being able to show emotion as well as be resilient. We can feel those emotions that we're having and those physical states, but we want to have an awareness of how we regulate ourselves and how we must regulate ourselves in certain situations to be able to be resilient, to think clearly through situations and problem solve and be our resilient self. So when we're thinking about self-regulation, we can think of stop, slow, and go. So if we're feeling a lot of emotions that are kind of getting in the way of us actually overcoming the situation that we're in, we can think stop, just pause for a second, slow down, think things through, and then continue on with action that's actually going to allow us to be productive and effective. The third competency is optimism. Optimism has so many amazing benefits. Optimistic thinkers compared to pessimistic thinkers tend to be happier and have less depression. They're going to be healthier. They're seen as better leaders, have stronger relationships, better performance under pressure, and they tend to be more successful in school and work as well as relationships, as I mentioned. And this is because they're able to focus on solutions when change is possible, and when change isn't possible, they're able to accept the situation and move forward. They're also able to be more accurate and how much and understand how much control they actually have over situations. They tend to take better care of themselves. They're likely to try new strategies when things aren't working, and they're able to learn from failure and find meaning through setbacks. So optimism is extremely important. Kind of unfortunately for us, as human beings, we have a negativity bias that is just ingrained in us. That's going back from when we had to be in survival mode all the time. And so hundreds of years ago when we were fighting for our lives and making sure that we were able to sustain our daily lives, living maybe not as comfortably as we do now. We had to rely on our negativity bias to survive. We had to look for threats. We had to look for things that were going to get in the way of us actually living in the most simple sense. And so we still tend to have that negativity bias. I urge you to think about tonight when you go home and you're reflecting on your day, recognize if you're only thinking about those things that didn't go so great or that were kind of annoying to deal with. That's your negativity bias at work. And so when we want to be resilient, we want to be able to be optimistic because there are so many other benefits, especially as we're thinking through situations or problems, because we're able to find where we have control, lean on our people if we're able to build better relationships, and then let go of the things that we don't have control over. The fourth competency of resilience is mental agility. So this is the ability to take others' perspectives, identify and understand problems for what they are, just the details, just the information, and being willing to try new strategies. So that mental agility, we can think of the acronym FAT, F-A-T. So flexible, accurate, and thorough. Being able to be resilient and having that mental agility allows us to be flexible in situations, especially when we don't have control over everything, accurate in our understanding of problems or things that are actually going on, and then thorough, again, understanding the full extent of a situation, of a problem, of a task that is being asked of us so that we can try the strategy that's going to be best for the situation or the demand. The fifth competency is strengths of character. So we can think of this as what's going right with me. What are my strengths? What are my values? What are the things that I'm really, really good at that allow me to be my best self when it matters or on a daily basis? So as we're thinking about resilience in general, there are a lot of things that we do really well. When we go back to what we talked about in the very beginning of today's session, you all recognize that you are good at something and what it took to get you to that place. And so we can rely on those characteristics or values or strengths to build even more resilience, especially when things are not going right or you're met with that challenge or adversity. If we can pull on our strengths, that allows us to be more confident in those situations and focus on how to get out of those situations or overcome those situations in a better and more efficient way. Last competency is connection. So we talked a lot about connection and relationships already, but being able to build strong relationships using positive and effective communication, being able to develop empathy, willing to ask for help when we need it, and also allowing ourselves to be in a position to support others builds resilience in every way. So when we're thinking about resilience, we want to remember that other people matter in our journey to resilience, and they allow us to build it on a daily basis. So all of these competencies can be practiced with 12 different skills. We will talk about one today, but those skills allow us to cope with stress, overcome those setbacks, solve problems, remain task focused. So we're not thinking about the implications of the demands or the task, but we're really focusing on just getting the task done as best we can. We're able to perform under pressure, increase our confidence, and then also decrease helplessness, depression, and anxiety. So when we think about resilience skills, we want to think about them as making us stronger and not softer, because sometimes it sounds like, okay, we have to build a lot of awareness and regulate our emotions, and sometimes it sounds a little soft, but it all makes us stronger people. It makes us more resilient people, and more excellent, consistent performers. So this all sounds like a dream, right? It sounds like a dream to me. And as we've been talking about, it does take work, it does take time and patience to actually build and practice awareness and resilience. So when we're thinking about that first building block of resilience, we need to build self-awareness. And this goes back to that cognitive behavioral science and positive psychology. So this thought connection outcome was actually developed by Dr. Albert Ellis, and he discussed the connection between something that happens, how we think about this event, and then how it drives our consequences and our outcome. So when we're thinking about building awareness, we need to understand what our thoughts are going to be in these situations, and then how that affects how we feel and what emotions we're feeling that drives our behaviors. So according to this model, something happens, an activating event. So let's just say you happen to be pulled over by the police as you're driving home from work. You have some kind of thought about this event, a heat of the moment thought. Maybe it's, oh shoot, or something else. Everybody is different. But let's just say for me, if I got pulled over, I'd be like, oh no, what happened? Like, I wonder what I was doing wrong. And because I have those thoughts, that is going to drive what we call consequences. So we can zoom in on those consequences to break them out into feelings and emotions, and then physical state. So if I get pulled over and I think, oh shoot, what am I doing wrong? That elicits some kind of emotion, most likely negative, and it also creates a physical state within my body. So my heart rate increases. Maybe I'm shaking a little bit. Maybe my muscles are tense. My breathing quickens just because I'm getting pulled over. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but that's the connection between some kind of activating event and my thoughts and how I'm feeling. And so as an outcome, maybe these feelings and this physical state makes me feel more nervous. It makes me look more nervous, more guilty of something, even if I haven't done anything. Maybe I'm not able to speak clearly, and that's going to affect how I am in that situation, right? So when we think about stuff happening to us, this is just a hypothetical, but when we're thinking about these events, sometimes we think that being pulled over makes me feel tense and scared and nervous. But it's in reality, it's what I'm thinking about that event. So when I get pulled over and I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? Then that's creating some kind of emotion, some kind of physical state that is driving my outcome. So really, we're not affected so much by that activating event, but we're really affected by how we think about this activating event. And that's where we want to zero in on when we think about self-awareness. So another example is happens to be another car example, but this actually happened to me. So in the summer, I was having a lot of car trouble. My engine light kept coming on. And so eventually I said, okay, I got to get that checked out, of course. I drive it every single day. I need my car. I need to get it checked out. So I bring it into the garage. It turns out there was just something small wrong with it, thankfully. So it was fixed. I go on my way, and then the next day, not even 24 hours later, the engine light turns on again. And so if we think about that as my activating event, my engine light coming on again, you better believe I had some thoughts about that. One of my heat of the moment thoughts was like, what the heck? How could this happen again? I just spent so long waiting for my car to get fixed, and now I have to go back. What a waste of time. That thought or those thoughts drove emotions of frustration, maybe some anger, and that physical state that I was in was definitely tense, getting a headache, just stressed for sure. And so that drove an outcome of not really focusing on what I needed to do during that day. As I was driving to work, I was thinking about my engine light, how it needs to be fixed again, when I need to go in for it. But I needed to focus on my work, and I was preoccupied by other things when there was nothing I could do about it in the moment. So I was really focusing on those things that I could not control in the moment, rather than the things that I actually needed to control and focus on, which was my work. So that's a thought outcome connection. When we understand where we have control, which is in our thoughts, then we're able to focus more on how we can think clearly, how we can think in a more effective way to then have the outcome that we want, to feel how we want to feel, to be in the physical state that we need to be in, to actually overcome those situations. Another example that we can think of that's pretty timely right now is New Year's resolutions. So January 1st, everybody comes in with this renewed sense of motivation and excitement to reach all of their goals this year, which is great in one way. But in another way, we can think of New Year's resolutions as just a thought outcome connection. So maybe our activating event is that January 1st comes around. So activating event is just the date. Nothing special about that specific date other than what we impose on it as the beginning of a new year, the beginning of our getting our goals and getting excited about them. But the activating event itself is just January 1st. It's just one day on the calendar, nothing truly special about that day. What we think about that day makes it special, makes it important to us, makes it something that drives our feelings and emotions, our physical state, and then drives our behaviors. So when January 1st comes around and it's really important to me, and I think, all right, this is the time I'm going to reach all of my goals. I'm going to be in the best shape of my life, and I'm going to eat the most healthy, and I'm going to connect with and make more friends. That's going to drive me to feel more motivated and excited. Physical state that I'm going to be in is going to be more relaxed so that then I can actually do those behaviors that are needed to reach those goals. So both ways you can think about it, no matter what the activating event is, it's really truly how we think about those things that are happening to us, the situations that we're in, that controls how we feel and our behaviors ultimately. Of course, not all thought outcome connections are ineffective. So when frustrating things happen or things that happen that we feel are out of our control, oftentimes our brain goes to those things that don't go so well. But we can also look at these connections as things that go really well. So one example is my very first solo presentation at my first job right out of grad school. I was speaking to a group of soldiers in the Army, all about communication. So that's extremely important. And of course, that presentation, I wanted to exemplify good communication through that presentation as well. So I had it all planned out. I was supposed to have 40 people come in person. I had activities and props and handouts. Everything was great. But on the day of the event, I actually had 80 people show up. So double the amount of people attended that I had planned for. I had a moment of, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? When I'm thinking about this ineffective thought outcome connection, if I had gone with those thoughts of, I am not prepared for this, there's double the amount of people that I have, I don't have the right activities, I don't have enough handouts, I cannot do this. That would give me feelings of overwhelm, scared, I'd be panicked. My physical state would be very tense. My heart rate would increase. I would probably start sweating. My face would get red. And then as a result, because I'm thinking about how much I cannot do this, how much I am not prepared for this, I am not problem solving. I am not thinking through how I can adjust the presentation. Maybe the presentation goes fine, but it's not as good as it could have been. And then as a result, I'm not feeling like I did my very best. Because I had those thoughts of panic in the moment. An effective thought outcome connection, an effective thought that I could have had to allow myself to be in the best position, to be that best performer that I can be in those situations, even when things don't go well or things that I can't control. I could have thought, this is so exciting. People want to come to see this. They think that it's important. I'm ready for this. That allows me to feel excited, to be proud of the presentation that I put together. And it also allows me to feel more relaxed. Maybe I stood taller, my muscles were less tense, and I was able to think clearly through how to adjust the activities, adjust the things that I had planned to accommodate those that group of people. And as an outcome, it would have been a great presentation, which actually happened. So definitely allowing ourselves to be aware of how we think changes how we feel, how we interact with people, and then what we do to overcome that situation. And the easiest thing that we can do when these situations arise is reflect. So in order to build awareness of these situations, in order to build how we respond in certain situations and understand the thought patterns that we tend to have, we want to reflect on how helpful or harmful those thoughts that we had about the activating event was. So in that situation, if I had thought this presentation, I am not prepared for this, and if that's actually the thought pattern that I had gone down and followed, after the fact, I would have reflected and thought, was that harmful or was that helpful for myself, for my performance, for what I needed to do and the demands of the situation? I would have said no. And then we will talk about in just a second how we can adjust that in real time as we're practicing resilience, as we're practicing self-awareness and really focusing on the things that we can control. But the first thing that we need to do is reflect, was this situation an outcome that I appreciated, that I'm proud of, that I expected? Was it not? And if it wasn't, well, really, if it was either what you expected or not what you expected, we can still reflect on, what did I think in that moment? And was that helpful or was it harmful? The best way to do this is to reflect at the end of the day on certain situations. We can always start with the things that don't go so well. As I discussed before, our negativity bias is going to highlight those things that don't go so well throughout the day. So those are going to be easily remembered. But remember too to focus on the things that did go well, expected or unexpected. But that's going to allow us to build a full picture of awareness, a full picture of what it looks like to think in the most effective way for your own performance and the demands that you have throughout the day, and what it looks like to feel and think in certain ways that allow us to be our best selves. So we want to make sure to reflect on both things that go well and things that don't go well, things that were helpful and things that were harmful. So in order to do this in real time, we are gonna, it's gonna ask us to be able to practice those things, to build that self-awareness. Over time, we are going to get better at recognizing these things in real time, but it does take time and take practice and takes patience. So it's not going to happen right away, but if you are in a situation that isn't going right or doesn't seem to have the outcome that you're expecting, there are certain things that you can do within the moment to practice that resilience and have the most likely outcome that's going to be the best for you. So there are 5 steps to real-time resilience that we want to practice. And remember, it's not going to be perfect. And it's all about learning from your mistakes, learning from things, and growing and thriving eventually. So 1, we need to recognize the activating event. So that activating event is just what's happening to you. It's nothing to do with your interpretation of the event. It's just the information, just the facts. Then we want to understand how we might be feeling in the heat of the moment. So HOMT or HOTM is heat of the moment. So what are those heat of the moment feelings, thoughts, physical state, emotions that we may be feeling within this event, within this situation? Then we want to remember where we have control, especially in those situations that we feel a little bit out of control. We want to remember that we always have control over our thoughts. Then we can think about what is the best outcome from this situation. What are the behaviors that I need to do to get to this best outcome? How can I deal with this situation? And then lastly, what am I going to think that'll help me deal with this situation to get to that best outcome? Because remember, if we think about that best outcome, if we have the most effective thoughts for how we want to feel and our physical state, then our behaviors are going to follow along with us. So again, if something happens to you, we want to recognize how we might be feeling, the emotions, the physical state, any thoughts that may just come up heat of the moment, regardless if they're helpful or harmful in that moment, we are still going to have those thoughts. Then we want to think about the best outcome possible, and then actually create those thoughts that are going to be helpful. So one last example for you. I just ran a race marathon last weekend. I was dealing with some injuries, but I decided to go for a PR. And right around mile 6, I twisted my ankle pretty hard on something on the road. And it's so early in the race that I had a lot of thoughts about it. But if we talk about my activating event as rolling my ankle at mile 6, so it's just the facts. My initial feelings and emotions were disappointment, frustration, anger at somebody who threw something on the road that I twisted my ankle on. Physical state, definitely tense. My leg was shaking. And then my thoughts from that were, all right, this is it. My race is over. I'm at mile 6. Should I step off the course? Should I be done? Should I keep going? Lots of thoughts going on in my head, but I know as reflecting on that, even within the moment, that wasn't going to help me. If I wanted to PR, I had to stop wasting time on the side of the road, and I had to see if I could walk on it. I was able to, so I decided to continue on, to keep going. And in that moment, as the miles went on, I just had to continue thinking the thoughts that I knew were going to help me push toward hopefully getting a PR or at least finishing the race. And so as I was going through, continuing to run, I knew that the thoughts that I needed to tell myself to be in a better emotional state and a better physical state, more relaxed, figuring out my form. And then emotions, like I wanted to continue having fun because marathons are hard, but they're something that I choose to do because I love it. So the thoughts that I had to elicit those feelings and those emotions were, I am resilient. I'm okay. I can do this. You still have time. And that allowed me to finish the race. Not a PR, so it's not perfect, but I definitely had more fun. I enjoyed it versus ruminating on it and being angry and frustrated the entire race. So again, it's not going to be it's not going to be pretty, but we are able to have the best outcome that we can within the situations that we're given, within the situations that we're facing, especially if they're challenges or setbacks. If we're able to focus on where we have control, what we're thinking, and understanding what emotions and what feelings or physical state are going to allow us to be at our best selves and have the best outcome possible. So I urge you all to practice that awareness. That is going to be your number one thing to prioritize as we work on resilience moving forward. And that starts with reflection tonight or even on your lunch break in just a couple minutes. If you are taking a lunch, anytime you have throughout the day, just write down a couple things that maybe didn't go so well or went really well, your thoughts, how you felt, and the outcome. That's going to allow you to be more aware of those thought patterns and how you respond in certain situations to either continue those or change them. If you are interested in more resilience practice, we have 2 more classes coming up this semester. So March 26th, we're talking about monotasking, so focusing on one task at a time, really understanding how we can focus so that we can be our best selves. And then May 14th, stop catastrophic thinking. So really stopping that downward spiral of things that maybe aren't going so well so that we can actually deal with the situation in the best way possible. I would love to take some questions. If anybody has any, you can come off mute, put it in the chat if you'd like. I appreciate you all. Everybody will get 10 Wellbemer Rewards points for attending today. I'll stick around if anybody does have any questions, but feel free to share, to email me or call me and discuss resilience anytime. We will send out the PowerPoint link in the chat, and this recording will be available, as Miranda talked about, on our YouTube channel and through our blog.